Monday, the 19th of October, 2020. This is a meeting of the Stayton City Council in a Zoom meeting. Those of us that can be here are Councillor Hook and Councillor Ort. We're not able to be here this evening, so it's just three of the councillors and staff and myself. Because we're not face to face, Alyssa, can you tell us who among the staff are here tonight?
Sure. We've got Keith Campbell, City Manager, is here with me in the building, as is Chief Riesendahl. Susanna Sabraja, the Finance Director, is also on the call. Jana Moser, the Library Director. Lance Ludwig, the Public Works Director. And Dan Fleischman, our Director of Planning and Development, is also on the call.
Okay, thanks very much. Thank you. Welcome all. And welcome to those watching and trying to be involved in this.
And one more I missed is we've got Keller Associates on that's going to be doing their presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Good, welcome. Is the agenda shows public comment? Is there any?
No, we did not receive any requests to provide comment or written comment.
Okay. Then the next thing is a consent agenda for October 5th. And has everyone had a chance to look at that?
Yes. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to offer a motion that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Okay.
I'll second.
I got a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda as presented. Everyone's had a chance to look at it. Alyssa, would you poll the council on it, please?
Sure. Councillor McDonald?
Yes.
Councillor Mullen?
Yes.
Councillor Patty?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 3-0.
Okay, thank you. We don't have any public hearings this evening. So under general business, wastewater master plan update, a verbal presentation by Keller Associates. And so let's turn that over to them. And would you make the necessary?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is Lance. Before I turn this over to Keller, I want to give you a brief background of where this started and where we're headed and where we're at now. As you are aware or may not be aware, our current wastewater master plan was performed and finished in 2005 and adopted in 2006. And during our February 2019 council retreat, that was one of our goals, was to upgrade or update our wastewater, all our master plans. It just so happened last 2019, it was time for our wastewater master plan to be updated. I put an RFP out in August of 2019. It was awarded to Keller Associates in November of 2019. And over the last 10 or 11 months, we've been working diligently with Keller to update our wastewater master plan and do some I&I analysis in the city. To start this project off, we had to form two committees. One was a technical advisory committee, consisted of myself, John Ashley, our city engineer, Troy Sanders, Danielle Emmert, Dan Fleischman, Susanna. We had Myrna Harding from Sublimity. We had Alan Frost, the Public Works Director from Sublimity. We had Jeff Crowther from OAW, and we had Tim Effectrix of DEQ as part of that technical advisory committee. We also formed a citizen advisory committee, and our own David Patty was a part of that, I'm happy to say. And we also had James Kingsbury, the mayor of Sublimity, on that panel, as well as Ralph Lewis and Heidi Hazel of the Planning Commission. Keller was represented by Peter Olson, the gentleman with the tie there. We also had Emily and Elizabeth and Eric. I believe they're all on the call tonight. Perhaps Eric isn't. I only see three of them. But with that, I'm I'm going to turn it over to Peter, and they can highlight what we found so far and where we're headed.
Thanks, Lance. Appreciate it. Glad to be here tonight. You know, towards the conclusion, and happy to have the participation that we did from Councilor Patty and others involved in the Citizens Advisory Committee and the Technical Advisory Committee. It's a very important process to have that involvement and have them aware of the process throughout it. It's very involved, and so it's hard to capture all that in a short presentation to council, and we're going to do our best. It's something that all three of us are pretty passionate about. We love what we do, and you know, if you have questions as we go along, I'm happy to answer those. I shouldn't say I'm happy to answer. We will answer those. And so you'll learn very quickly here that Emily and Liz are the brains behind the operation here. So wanted to start off. Let me see if I can we have a presentation, PowerPoint. Let's see if technology is gonna be our friend tonight.
Whoa.
All right, just give me a confirmation. Are you guys seeing the presentation?
It's in nice big print too. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, so here we are tonight. So our scope overview, Lance alluded to a few components of that. As I mentioned, the Technical Advisory Committee and the Citizen Advisory Committee are an important component of the scope of work. We met, you know, the Citizen Advisory Committee will have our 4th meeting and final meeting tomorrow. The Technical Advisory Committee, I think we'll have our 6th is what it came to, 6th Technical Advisory Committee meeting tomorrow night, or tomorrow during the day. Data collection is an important part of the process, and for this one we did quite a bit with continuous flow monitoring, having devices actually in the pipes monitoring the flow and collecting that data during the rainfall and when it doesn't rain. We had the nighttime monitoring where we go open manholes in the middle of the night. It's my favorite thing to do at 3 a.m. is to go see what flows your system has. And then smoke testing is another fun process of which you guys were probably aware of. I think it was August, or was it September? August timeframe that we went and used our equipment and blew smoke up down the manholes and in the pipes, and you know, document where it comes out. It helps with the I&I analysis, the infiltration and inflow analysis. We did a overall collection system evaluation. We developed a hydraulic computer model for that. We did, as I mentioned, the infiltration and inflow study. As well, we did the wastewater treatment plant, looking at that, its capacity, its how well it's doing with meeting the criteria for the regulatory agency. And then we put together some proposed and recommended alternatives for both the treatment system as well as the collection system. And then looking specifically at the infiltration and inflow and making recommendations for improvements there. And that all gets collected and combined into the capital improvement plan. And then that is documented in a lengthy report, which includes, you know, all the data, all the, you know, how we got to where we got and what those recommendations are. So I'd like to thank you. That was a good, no, we have more. So I'm going to pass it on to Liz.
Okay, I'm going to start out by talking about our planning criteria. So this study has a 20-year planning period, which meant that we needed to project out to the 2040 populations for both Stayton and Sublimity because of Sublimity's wastewater contributions. We use county and PSU coordinated population forecasts. And the 2040 combined total population that we found was 12,697 people. So as a part of the study, we're characterizing wastewater flows, both in terms of flow rate, and you'll see later with loading. So we use historical wastewater data and our population projections to characterize these flows for both current existing conditions and then again 2040 conditions. And these flows were used for both the collection system and the treatment plant evaluations. So similar to the last slide, we characterized particular constituent loadings that were needed to evaluate the wastewater treatment plant. And of note, we have both dry weather and wet weather flows presented here because the city's discharge permit, the NPDES permits, are different for dry and wet weather months.
Would you take a question, ma'am?
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Do engineers ever use complete words?
We try to avoid it at all costs.
You don't like our acronyms?
You're talking acronyms, huh?
I don't mean WWADL. No, it's an engineering language. I understand, I guess, but it's trying to understand everything. It's not so easy. But go ahead, you're doing fine.
I understand. That's why in most of our plans, we have an entire couple pages at the beginning of acronyms and abbreviations for that specific reason. Because it's tough.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
most of this is nerd talk. When you get to the graphics, it'll make a lot more sense to you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'll take that as a compliment, Lance.
I know you will, Emily.
Mr. Mayor, if I may ask a question real quick.
Please.
Could you just, Keller and Associates, I'm sorry, this is Councilor Patty, is there any way you could kind of just run down what some of these abbreviations mean real quick for the council's benefit? Because I know that was confusing when I first started.
Yeah, so you got DW is dry weather, WW is wet weather. You have ADL is average day loading, and maximum month daily loading. I'm saying daily loading, right? Yeah. And then
It's max day loading.
yeah, max day loading. So that's what ADL, MMDL, and then max day loading. So those are the different acronyms.
Dry weather, average daily loading. Okay. Sure. Okay.
And then BOD and CBOD is biochemical oxygen demand. So, and TSS is total suspended solids. I think I'm covering most of them up there. And
PPCD is pounds per capita per day.
So, all right.
Okay, so for our evaluations, particularly for the collection system, we needed to understand not only potentially what the population growth would be for 2040, but where in the city. So we looked at where growth has the potential to occur with city staff. And as a part of this, we considered future contributions from commercial and industrial growth. So this table shows estimated EDUs based on population projections, and then relevant acreage for industrial growth and estimated flows for both industrial and commercial. So this slide is just an overview of our planning criteria when it came for developing both our collection system model. As Peter mentioned earlier, we developed a computer model to look at flows moving through the wastewater pipelines. And you can see here we used a 5-year 24-hour storm event during these computer simulations. We also based capacity off the city's public works design standards. And then we evaluated the pump stations based on firm capacity. So that's with
the largest pump offline.
Right. So there's still redundancy in the system. And then for the wastewater treatment plant, 20-year planning criteria, we based that off the city's NPDES permit. So that's the discharge permit for treated effluent. And then the 3 basin rule, which the Standing River is under its jurisdiction, I guess.
Yep.
Okay. So for the collection system side of things, the city has approximately 36 miles of gravity pipeline and approximately 3 miles of forced main or pressurized sewer line. There are 4 pump stations. We performed facility evaluations at 3 of the 4 pump stations because Gardner Pump Station is anticipated to be taken offline within this planning period. And then, as Peter mentioned earlier, we performed an I&I analysis through data collection, and then prioritized areas and recommendations for improving the collection system.
And then this is the existing wastewater treatment plant overview. So this is an aerial of the plant, and I'll run through a quick treatment train on the next slide, which is the process schematic. But the plant is a SBR process plant, which are the 2 large rectangles. We'll see if Peter can point them out for me. Thank you. And so you have headworks that go into the SBR, and then there's some tertiary treatment and disinfection on the liquid side. And the solids go through some dewatering and then a dryer process, and then are land applied. So we'll look at a couple more of those pieces in the next slide on the schematic. So this is a treatment train, and so all of the collection system comes into the Influent flow meter and screen, and then it goes through the Influent pump station and gets pumped to the grit vortex chamber. So that removes all the solids and the grits prior to being discharged into the SBR sequencing batch reactors. And so there's 2 of those, and they operate opposite of each other, and that's where most of the biological treatment happens. And from there, they flow to the post SBR equalization basin, and this just allows you to regulate some of your flow going into the cloth filters, which is a tertiary removal of additional solids, and then it goes to UV disinfection before it's discharged to the river. And on the solid side, most of those solids, they come from the SBRs, and they're pumped to aerated sludge storage. And then they go through dewatering belt filter presses, and they are typically sent to the sludge dryer, and then they are Class A and land applied, and they're given free to the public right now. You also have a backup unit process that allows for lime stabilization. So there's a lime silo on site in conjunction with the belt filter press, and that's not currently used, but the equipment is there for if you needed it for some reason. So this is a look at the current effluent performance. And so the red lines are loading, so they're pounds per day, average loading pounds per day, and they are based on the 3 basin rule, which also aligns with the NPDES permit. And as you'll see, we've mentioned before, the winter months have different regulations than the summer months, different requirements. So for the most part, your performance is doing very well, is under the limits. You'll notice there on the top chart that in winter of 2018, there were some process upsets, and that was due to a malfunctioning of a sensor in the SBR, followed by some mechanical equipment failures and a power outage. And so operators were able to fix that, and it wasn't a treatment capacity issue, it was a equipment failure issue. And so similar to the pump stations, we did a wastewater treatment plant condition assessment. And so in the fall of 2019, we went to the plant and had Troy show us around all of the facilities. We talked to him, documented the existing conditions, and provided some recommendations for any of the either redundancy or conditions of the plant unit processes. Some of the larger items is looking at replacing the blowers, which provide aeration to the SBR units. The Influent pump currently pumps at a solid rate and does not have, it is not able to vary its flow rate, which would be helpful for controlling the SBR treatment. So we're recommending putting in additional pump controls as a VFD. There's a number of spare parts we're recommending putting on the shelf, which helps with the redundancy and reliability of the various units. The Influent screen, we're recommending a second redundancy on that. And then there's a few miscellaneous SBR improvements, such as allowing the operators to clean it more easily by regrading some of the basins. And then overall, typical minor repair and maintenance, nothing of great note. So the takeaways from the condition assessment.
All right, now we're going to move back to the collection system.
Mayor, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. Back to the treatment plant itself. Keller's expertise, this is not in any way meant to be critical. Keller's expertise on wastewater treatment plants, it's not all out of a book. Do people who evaluate these at Keller, they have to have firsthand experience in wastewater treatment plants, am I correct?
Yes, you're correct. And so our senior process engineer, as well as myself, were at the facility evaluation. And so Eric Roundy is the one who was also helping lead and take lead on the condition assessment. And he has, I guess I'm not, quite a few years of process experience, and he pretty much has a hand in every wastewater treatment plant project that we run out of Keller in terms of design as well as evaluations. And he previously worked for a wastewater equipment manufacturing company and is familiar with a lot of technologies and their conditions. So.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, we also consulted. We have an electrical and structural divisions within the company. And so we also consult with them. We take lots of pictures. If we need to, we can video them. But we do discuss the electrical and structural conditions with them to make sure that their recommendations get included as well.
Okay, another question. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is Councilor Patty. I have a question, I think, Emily, for you. So you recommend the influence screen redundancy. What's the purpose of that? All the other items on this list I pretty much get, but is that just a regulation or best practice, or what's the deal there?
It's best practice. So right now you have 2 influence screen channels. One of them has been replaced and it's an automatic cleaning screen. The second channel, which is used as an overflow, as well as if you have to take your influence screen down for any maintenance, you would direct your flow through that second channel. Currently has a manual bar screen, and those bars really are just too wide apart. And so they allow more grit and more solids through. And so in general, for best practice and the fact that you do use that secondary channel every once in a while, we just are recommending having another, I think it's an incline screen right now on the first channel.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes.
Okay, so this figure shows the result of evaluating the collection system with the existing population and existing infrastructure during a 5-year storm event. So you'll see these red dots in the figures, if you want to point to that, Peter.
Yeah.
So those red dots indicate manholes that could potentially overflow during a 5-year storm event. And the red and yellow lines indicate undersized pipes. So trunk lines on Jedders Way, Ida, Evergreen, and Washington are at or above capacity. And then we have issues with pipes upstream of Gardner Pump Station, indicating that the pumps at that pump station are undersized.
Would you go through the capacity pump stations again, please? I was trying to follow this, and there's an arrow pointing at it.
Sure. So Gardner Pump Station,
okay,
is located where the cursor is now. So the red pipe is upstream of it.
Okay.
Which indicates that the pumps aren't able to keep up with the flow that is coming into the pump station.
Yeah. Okay, I understand that.
And then the other red lines that the cursor was following, those are gravity main. Okay. And those are undersized for the current wastewater flows under the conditions of the simulation. So a 5-year storm event where you have a higher amount of precipitation coming into your pipelines and manholes.
Okay. How about one more question, quick. How about the one up at the top at the north, where sublimity loads come into the system?
Right here.
Yeah.
So we're actually not
Showing any surcharging problems at that area, and that goes down and goes over to the Mill Creek pump station, but those are showing either less than 0.5, the Q over Q, or the, you know, about half the size full of the pipe, or the 0.5 to 0.75, which is, you know, its carrying capacity is sufficient.
That pump station out there on Golf Club, there, that's wherever the sublimity inflow comes in, that's got a lot of treatment later on in the study. I'm going to be curious about that. That vault, whatever it is, the vault that measures the amount of flow coming in.
the flume.
Yes.
That's down the road a ways. Go ahead, please.
Okay.
Okay, so this figure shows the results of the 5-year simulation with the 2040 projected population growth and no improvements made to the existing system. So we saw the same infrastructure, but with a greater population contributing wastewater flows. As you can see, the issues are largely the same. We have the same pipe capacity issues, or same areas of the city. But the model didn't show additional, or the potential for additional manhole overflows. Or did you want to? Okay. Okay, so looking at alternatives and really recommended improvements here. So this figure shows our collection system, CIP. So these are the recommended improvements to address capacity issues. And you do see Mill Creek flow meter replacement. I'm not sure if that's what you were referring to, Mayor.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we looked at a couple ways to address the flow meter that's not currently working. And we have a recommendation in the report to do so, such that a bypass line can also be installed with that replacement. And then within this figure, if you don't mind being the pointer again.
Yeah.
So priority 1 is the red line. That's upsizing gravity main on Ida and Evergreen. And then we have, priorities, the priority 2s listed there, which we really looked at different ways to phase these projects, and the city has flexibility based on our analysis with phasing them. We have the burner pump station displacement. That's what we were pointing to, so the city can take the pump station offline and redirect flows northward. We also have, if you want to go to the Mill Creek force main extension. So this project's already been designed, and it extends the force main along Jetter's Way to improve capacity on Jetters. And then we have additional gravity main upsizing on Evergreen and Ida in green and yellow. Are there any questions about these projects?
One, where is the excitement about that Mill Creek flow meter replacement? Where's that coming from?
It's not, it's further north on this, from this figure. So we don't have an image of it.
But why? What drives it?
So, Mr. Mayor, let me speak to that. That is really, that's something that came out of conversations with staff more than anything, because there's no real way to measure flow currently, other than using slugs coming out of the pump station itself. There is no flow meter up there. In order to do that, you need to put a flow meter in.
Right.
We don't, the one that's in there right now doesn't work. And so that's what they're recommending here. Correct me if I'm wrong, Liz, but that is really what we're recommending, is to put a meter in there so we can actually see what kind of flows we have leaving that site, coming into and leaving.
Right. A meter, they can be isolated in the future, so the city can address issues by through easier maintenance of it than is possible right now.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
And just so you guys are aware, we can't see everybody. We can only see whoever's talking. And so we can't, if someone puts a hand up or something, just let us know. I mean, don't be bashful. So.
Okay, so we'll move to the I&I evaluation. As Peter mentioned earlier, we went through different forms of data collection, including flow monitoring, our pump run times from our facilities evaluation, CCTV footage, and then nighttime monitoring. And we used all this information to prioritize I&I improvements for the city.
I would just say the CCTV footage, that's basically a camera that, you know, they're sticking a camera up a pipe on a little remote, you know, device, remote car or remote truck type of deal, and inspecting the pipelines.
They clean it and then they inspect the pipelines. And so that is used as data that goes into our evaluation.
Next one.
Yeah. So this figure here shows the results of that analysis, the prioritization for areas of improvement. We've also included the CIP projects that we just discussed a couple of slides ago, so that so you can see where these projects overlap and address them in a financially feasible method. And you can see these projects are kind of dispersed throughout the system, although there is quite a bit of overlap on the IDA and Evergreen trunk lines. And then within the report, we have a list of spot repair recommendations as well.
And then shifting over to wastewater treatment plant capacity. So this looks at sort of the unit processes on the liquid side for your treatment plants and the governing flow. There are different flow triggers that you usually size different unit processes depending on how much flow equalization essentially there are within each processes. So the top three are all headworks, and they usually are sized to your peak flow, which is similar, the same value that you use in your collection system. And then the SBR basins are typically sized with a max month wet weather flow, excuse me. And the post SBR equalization is peak day. Filtration is 3/4 of peak day flow. And your UV disinfection is sized again for the peak instantaneous flow. So this shows you the firm capacity provided by the unit process as it exists today, the capacity needed, which is based on those flow projections you saw back at the beginning of the presentation, and then the 2040 projected capacity needed. And we'll see here the two in red, the SBR basins and the post SBR equalization are the main concerns for this capacity. And the SBR basins, the 3-basin rule limits this capacity. And the reason for that is the 3-basin rule, provides a load limit to your river, and therefore at higher flows in the wintertime, you must have a lower concentration so that your overall load to the river stays under the 3-basin rule limit. And so that prevents you from being able to handle the current projected 2040 capacity. And the post SBR equalization, the basin and the pump capacities are lower than we would recommend for your 2040 capacity.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, this is Councilor Patty.
Go ahead.
Yes, Keller and Associates. Can you kind of just break that down to layman's terms? Like, I understand what you're saying, but somebody in the audience perhaps might not. So essentially, what I'm gathering from that is that we are able to keep up with what our load is currently, correct?
Yes.
And then in 2040, we will not be able to keep up with our load currently, especially with the 3-basin rule.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And remember that when we get to the capital improvement plan, keep that mental, put a pin in that one. Any other questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. So looking at the wastewater treatment plant alternatives, these are sort of our main objectives and goals with proposing and recommending alternatives. And so we're looking for solutions that are practical and cost effective for the city, solutions that provide reliable treatment to meet your permit limits, maximizing the use of existing facilities, and then selecting facilities that can be constructed without negatively impacting your effluent quality, and identifying solutions that can be phased to reduce the debt and minimize your user rate increases. So these were sort of our overarching goals of finding solutions for the treatment plant. And so there are 3 main areas that we looked at alternatives. And so for each of those units, unit processes, this one is your discharge. We looked at a couple of alternatives, typically around 3, and we performed different evaluations, including an advantages, disadvantages evaluation, which maybe is not only directed by cost, but has some other safety and operation and environmental impacts or other impacts that we thought were relevant. And then there also is cost comparisons in the evaluation as well. And so here for your discharge, we've recommended alternative number 2, which is providing some winter influent equalization and continuing to discharge to the river. And so you'll be able to hold some of your peak flows in the winter in a pond and then slowly put them through the treatment plant to reduce the peak flow going through your treatment plant and allow you to handle those higher flows. And then the second process we looked at was the post SBR equalization, as you saw on the capacity slide. And we are recommending that you add a gravity pipe to the selector cell and combine that selector cell with the existing equalization basin. And this will allow volume in the selector cell to be used as post equalization and provide much more flexibility and reliability in operating your SBRs and how and when you decant those, you drain those basins.
Thanks.
Yeah. And then the third treatment plant component we addressed with alternatives was the sludge drying. And so the recommendation here is a little bit of a combination of, basically it's 2, but it's a combination of 2A and B. And so new dryers have very high capital costs. And so the recommendation is to begin budgeting for a new dryer. In the meantime, we've recommended a few spare parts be purchased for the existing dryer so that operation and maintenance can happen quicker if that's needed. And then we recommended that the dryer type selection be made during the pre-design. We looked at a couple of different types to replace them with, and one's a belt dryer and one is a paddle dryer. And there are advantages and disadvantages to both of them, and we think you should do an additional or continue to evaluate those and have your operators visit some installations and things like that during a pre-design for that project. And that is the last of the treatment plan alternatives, and I'll let Peter then talk about the capital improvement plan.
So now we have all the collection system and the treatment system recommended improvements, all summarized on one table here. What we're looking at is we rank, put prioritization to that, which ones should be tackled first as opposed to later. A lot of times we try and look at what's driving, those improvements, what's the urgency related to those improvements, and what's the primary purpose. You can see the primary purpose there for those capital improvements there.
you have the total estimated cost, and then the SEC growth
Apportionment is what
do we recommend as the percent eligible?
that it can be paid for with STC funds. And then, take that minus take that away from the total estimated cost, and that's what would be the city's estimated portion there. For the priority one improvements, you can see, and this was an evolving
Process there with the STC percent. We've been working with Lance the last, week,
2 weeks to discuss that, and really just recently kind of came upon, this is where I was telling Councilor Patty is at, to kind of
remember the discussion that we had about
right now, currently, your treatment system can, you're near capacity, but you're not over capacity. You look at improvements 1.3, 4, and 5, those are all needed because of the growth.
as you get growth, like if you did not have any growth within the city, those improvements are not required. And so that's why the percent eligibility is a lot higher. And that's a good thing as you're looking for funding opportunities.
At least I think that's a good thing. I'll let you guys be the judge of that. But, when you do an SEC study and how much, you can or are able to charge in your SECs, it helps out with Lance and Public Works, to be able to budget and tackle those projects. I'm not sure what else specifically to say about this is the 20-year capital improvement plan.
And it is not the I&I.
Liz mentioned earlier the map showing the inflow and infiltration specific capital improvement plans, which is a separate specific capital improvement plan, but these are specific to the capacity and the treatment plan. And then looking at the 6 year, so DEQ
wants us to do a 6-year priority one capital improvement plan, which it kind of spreads out those costs within those first 6 years
of the capital improvement plan. And so that's what this table represents. And it includes the 2.7 an annual escalation that you should be planning for. Even though today we say this is the cost as in today's dollars, that obviously grows. The longer it takes to get to those projects, the costs are going to escalate.
As far as next steps,
for the
wastewater facilities planning study update,
we have the final technical advisory and
citizens advisory committee meetings tomorrow.
And we'll incorporate comments that we receive into the final draft. We have the council workshop today, right now, that we're doing. And then we will submit the final draft at the end of this month. We'll submit that to DEQ. We'll also provide that to Dan Fleischman for the Planning Commission, so he can advertise it and get that process rolling forward. In November, we'll do a presentation to the Planning Commission, and then we'll return and have a tentatively in December for City Council adoption. So that's the end of what we had prepared to present. If there's any questions or anything else you're curious about with having to do with the plan, we're happy to answer any of those.
Yeah, here's one. And Lance, you may have to help with this, but I'm sure you did this, probably too much information to absorb all at once. But did you make a short list, I hope, because we're going to have to find apparently millions of dollars to do these things. A few things that are absolutely critical that we need to be funding yesterday would be good, but right away.
Yeah, I think Peter spelled that out in a 6-year plan. I don't know if those years are accurate when we put money towards it, but I would say that number one priority is holding development back. It's holding development back right there on Ida Street. We're maxed out at capacity and sewer going down Ida Street. we put any more additional sewer from new development in that line, that's what causes those surcharging and overflows up farther into town. Liz, could you show that drawing? One more. There you go. See those 3 red dots there, Mayor?
Yes.
Those are manholes. And once you, any more development in, let's just say, the NORPAC property there,
Okay.
if that was to develop, it would back sewer up, potentially up, and there would be sewer coming out of those manholes. And so the only way to alleviate that is to upsize the line on Ida Street. That's the only way to fix that. So really, until that line is upsized, that NORPAC property probably shouldn't be developed. It probably should be sitting there.
Okay. All right.
So that is why that's priority number 1. I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, Emily, Liz, but I think from Jetter's Way, the north 150 feet, all the way up Ida, up Evergreen to Douglas, that whole area in there needs to be upsized. Once that's upsized, we're golden, really. I mean, we're good throughout the system, and then we can start looking at reducing costs by taking Gardner Lift Station offline and building the force main down Jetter's Way. But priority number 1 is to get that 30-inch built.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Lance. Thank you, folks. Okay. Anyone else with questions for this fine presentation?
I do want to add one more thing to this, and then the reason, I'm not sure if any of you caught this, I'm sure David has, because David sat through numerous meetings with this study, but you keep hearing Liz say 5-year, 24-hour storm. That's a storm. That's stormwater, right? We're talking about sanitary sewer. But she's saying they're running running this with a storm event. That's because we have so much I&I, it fills our lines up with stormwater. And so that's why they do that. I'm not sure if we eliminated 100% of our I&I, I'm pretty sure we'd still have to upsize those lines, but that's why they do that. A lot of our problems are just from I&I. And so we've got to come up with a plan to fix our I&I, as well as do our capital improvement, our infrastructure projects at the same time. I did want to ask Peter and Emily and Liz, when you went out and you did your I&I study, any kind of, what are your thoughts on how much is actually coming from service laterals from the public? Can you give us a,
yeah, I can talk to that, and that's a $1 million question. And what I would say is every system
is going to have problems with both, where the laterals and the main lines are fraught with areas where whether it's root intrusion or gaps or so on and so forth. But the laterals are one of the major contributors to that, and having a good lateral replacement program that is, enforceable and practical and productive is a major benefit to any sanitary sewer system.
did you guys find much smoke coming up from the ground when you did your smoke testing, or did you find any cross connections?
we did not
Find as much as we had hoped for.
I mean, that's just straightforward and blunt. I was hoping that we would have seen more. We were doing it in the ideal time of year when we should, if there was any time, it was that time we were going to see it. Did not see as much as I'd like to, Lance. And so what that tells us is it's not just the laterals, it's really just main lines are fraught with avenues of the water getting in.
All right. Thank you, Peter.
Yep.
Okay. Is there anything else from these folks? Do you folks have a concluding statement or get busy? Anything? Or are we done?
Mr. Mayor, if everyone else is done asking questions, I do have a statement I have.
Oh, okay. Somebody, go ahead, Mr. Patty.
I'll just jump in. Yeah, this is Councilor Petty again. So I just want to go ahead and encourage the other two councilors, if you guys can make time definitely to go down to the plant and take the tour. I'll say that myself and Councilor Ort, we both made time with our families and we went down there to find out where all the water goes when you flush. And it was really interesting. And that diagram on one of the slides where they kind of showed the process and the different places within the wastewater treatment facility, what's happening. It's really important to understand what these components are, the size of them when they talk about $1 million dryer, because to me, I would have probably rolled my eyes at a $1 million dryer, but when I saw it, it makes sense why it's over $1 million. And then the other thing too is just, I'd like to thank both the Technical Advisory Committee and the Citizens Advisory Committee. I really appreciate all the time that you guys cut out for this. I mean, it's super complex. I mean, just you guys are getting a piece of it, but there's a lot more that goes into this for these guys. And I'm just marveled at the expertise, especially that we have on hand with Lance. So thank you to you and coordinating this whole process, and look forward to seeing some of this stuff executed that we talked about in the plan for. So thank you.
I guess, Mayor, our final words is, we appreciate working for the city. I mean, this has been a good project. The city, staff work hard, to help us and provide the data and the information that we need. And so it's a pleasure working with the city that, is invested in getting these plans put together and improving their infrastructure. So we appreciate it.
Okay, well, thank you. And Alyssa, are we ready to go back to?
Yeah, we are. One last thing. I want to thank Keller and Associates. They've been great to work with. It's nice to rub shoulders with nerds once in a while in my capacity. And trust me, I'm not sure there's 3 bigger nerds in the entire valley than the 3 that's sitting right there. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it. And I look forward to finishing this thing up.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That's probably intended as some kind of a backhanded compliment.
Not to nerds. No way. Thank you. We'll sign out. You guys have a great evening and take care.
All right.
Well, see you tomorrow.
All right.
See you tomorrow, Lance. Bye.
Okay. This evening we've got an action, what was purported to be an action item on translation services. I think without Councilor Hook here especially, I don't know where you folks want to go with that. There's a staff report. If we could go ahead with that, Alyssa, Keith, and Dan on that. It was in the packet. Everyone, I hope that's here, got to read it. And Alyssa, lead off if you would on that one, please.
Sure. And I was going to start by asking if you guys did want us to move on with this tonight or if you wanted to delay it. But I'm happy to go forward with giving the report. And we can decide from there, however you want to do it.
Let's ask a straw vote. You want to set this aside for tonight or go ahead with the staff report? We'll have to hear it again. Chris, Councilor Moan?
I'm on the fence because part of me wants to hear it, but then one of the motions that I was looking through earlier today, when I found out that Councilor Hook wasn't going to be on here, was to motion for further research, which is more than likely where I was going to go anyways. So I would recommend that we postpone it until she's back. And really not necessarily because she was driving it, but because I know this is near and dear to her heart. And I know that Councilor Ort also was really interested in that conversation. So,
Councilor Patty, where would you like to be on this tonight?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I mean, I'd love to just discuss the issue tonight and push forward with these things. But, it sounds like there's an appetite for some further research on an item Chris has. So I'm comfortable tabling it until the next meeting, and hopefully they're able to join us that night.
I hope so. Councilor McDonald.
Yeah, I'm on board with the other counselors. I know that the other 2 counselors would definitely like to have some input here. So Yeah, I'm okay with tabling this till the next meeting.
Okay, let's do that then. Alyssa, thanks for
Sure. Yeah.
almost starting, but let's leave that one for another meeting,
Sure, we'll delay that and put that on the next agenda.
if you would, please.
Just out of curiosity and for protocol's sake, do we need to take a vote on that, or are we okay just informally moving on that?
I think we're okay with, there was the consensus, all three of you.
Okay.
So yeah, I think that's fine.
Right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm okay with it, but nobody cares what I think, but I'm okay. Anyway.
Of course we care what you think, Mr. Mayor.
No.
It's true.
Ballot box update, Jana Mosier. Jana.
Get Jana on here. There she is.
Box. This has to do with voting.
It does. I think most of you guys know, but we just wanted to make sure everybody knew that in partnership with Bill Burgess and the Marion County Clerk's Office, we've been able to install a 24-hour ballot box on the north end of the library. So it's a project we've been working on for months with them, and we're really excited about it. I think it'll be a great benefit to our community, not just for this election, but for elections going forward. The other thing I want to make sure I tell you guys is that it's a project that wouldn't have been possible without the help of Keith and Lance and Chief, without Michael Schmidt and Kendall and Tom Etzel and Ian from Public Works and Jason, who I almost just forgot, and also from Sergeant Meeks. So it really was a team effort, and we really appreciate Marion County's partnership with us on that.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
Thank you, Jana.
So Jana, that is permanent. It's not going anywhere after this election, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Quick question, is the area well lighted under that, above that box?
Yes, not right above it, but the library is well lit on that side. Yes.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, as Councilor.
Yes, Councilor.
Yep. Jana, I heard that was a very easy process getting that moved over there. Is that correct?
I think we worked real hard on it, is what I'm going to tell you.
Right. And I'm just going to say thank you for doing that. I appreciate you. I wanted to publicly appreciate you and all your efforts and what you did for that ballot box by furthering literally democracy in our little city here. So thank you.
Here, here.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Let's go on then, if unless there's anything else there other than a big thank you to Jana for making sure this happens, and that's good. I hope she doesn't have to carry that box in at night. I don't think she does. I hope she doesn't. Anyway, community improvement grants, Mr. Fleischman, staff report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is just another informational update for you about our community improvement grants. For a number of years, the city provided nonprofit organizations with a grant opportunity, and starting 2 years ago, or actually starting last year, no, 2 years ago, started the neighborhood improvement grants, in which grants were made available to neighborhood groups for improvements. And last year, the two were combined. So the community grant program provides financial support for programs and services that directly benefit Stayton residents or for neighborhood improvement projects. To be eligible, applicants either need to be a nonprofit organization, tax-exempt nonprofit organization, or need to be a group of 3 or more neighbors who come together and submit an application for a neighborhood project. Last year, we received 7 applications and awarded 6 grants. They went to the Stayton Community Food Bank, Jefferson Place Neighbors, Revitalize Downtown Stayton, Sylvan Springs Neighbors, the Community Emergency Response Team, and neighbors in the Westtown neighborhood. I've got some slides to show you of some of the projects. Unfortunately, we didn't have photos of all of them. The folks up in Sylvan Springs actually submitted about a 30-slide package documenting their efforts. I have not included all of it. I edited some of it out, but for the most part, this presentation will be of the Sylvan Springs. We've got, they received for the second year a grant to do improvements to the public walking path that goes through their neighborhood. So here are some before pictures, some pictures of them working together. They had a substantial amount of in-kind community participation as part of their grant, actually doing the work themselves. So here's pictures of their workday, doing cleanup, weed removal, etc. What the path looked like when they were done. Bought and installed a new garbage receptacle along the path. Did some ground cover improvements, replanting, reseeding. And actually put down new asphalt in a part of the path where the roots had kind of destroyed the original asphalt. The neighbors in Westtown received a grant to do repairs to the wall that was constructed by the original developer of that neighborhood back now 50 years ago. This is a picture that I grabbed off of Google Maps Street View of what the before was. This is June of last year that Google captured this image. And here it is this spring after the repairs were made. They not only hired a mason to do this work, but they also hired a painting contractor. This is the opposite side of that corner after it was painted. Okay. For the Stayton Community Food Bank, as I assume you know, the food bank changed locations last year from their 2nd Ave home to a new location out on Wilco Road. The grant helped them purchase new signage for their new location. This is on the wall of their building and another sign, and they also had some sandwich board signs made up that come in and out at night. Revitalized Downtown Stayton used their grant to help finance the production and placement of plaques on the historic buildings downtown. You see here installation in progress. The plaques themselves were modeled on the plaques that were put up 12 years ago or so by the Chamber of Commerce on a number of buildings. So the same style was used. And there were about 20 of these that were put up, mostly on buildings, some on posts, most of them with a financial contribution as part of the match for the grant from the property owner. And of course, all with the consent and permission of the property owner. It's been about 3 weeks since they were put up, and I know the group's gotten a lot of comments and compliments for the effort. Just the other two projects that were funded, the Jefferson Street neighborhood used it for tree trimming while for the trees in the landscape area. That's the kind of the backside of their neighborhood that on East Sandy Am Street. The CERT team used it for purchase equipment and supplies. And And really, the real reason we're bringing this forward to you tonight is, one, so that you and the public know what was funded with the grants last year, but also to make sure that everybody knows that the grant application process for this year has started this afternoon. I got the application posted up on the city's website. And applications for this year will be accepted up until Friday, November 27th. Staff will score the projects, the applications received, and we will be back before the council sometime probably in early January with presentation of the applications and recommendations for funding.
Okay.
So I'll answer any questions that you may have, but really it was just to make sure that you and the public know how this money was spent and that more money is available for this year for these types of neighborhood projects or for nonprofit groups to use.
Well, thank you, Dan. Questions for Dan?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilor Patty, if I may.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Dan, Councilor Patty, I just had a question. How far were we short last year? I'm sorry, I don't recall. Do you know?
Last year we had $20,000 available in total. There were 7 applications submitted, I think, for a total of about 25,000.
Yeah.
And one of the applications that was awarded a reduced amount below what they had asked for, but that's what got us to the 20,000.
Right. So I was just going to say, not necessarily to you, Dan, but to the other counselors on here, I just want you guys to see the results to this great program, and maybe not this year with COVID and foot, but perhaps in the following years we can look at more investment in this program. It seems to be really making good steps in the city and the community. I've heard positive things from citizens that have spoken to me about this, and they're very happy to see the improvements around town.
So last year, as I said, last year there was $20,000 in total available. This year, the budget committee and the council allocated $30,000. So we should be able to fund, an additional number of applications this year.
Yes, Dan, I would say I'm hoping that we surpass 30,000 in applications this time.
It would be great.
Right.
All right.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Hey, Councilor Mullen here. Hey, yeah, I've had the pleasure of not only being here when we started this thing, but I'm a huge advocate for the program. I really love that we were able to actually do before and afters this year to show the work that people have done. But I've actually had the pleasure of being part of one of the neighborhoods that participated. And I think it was really cool to kind of sit back as a participant and see some of the stress and pressure of making sure that we had the after photos done to show the work that people were doing in a timely manner. And there was work, Councilor Patty, that folks were doing during the pandemic, and they were maintaining social distance and stuff like that outdoors. But some of the cleanup around the fence lines and stuff like that were still being done during the pandemic. And yeah, huge advocate. And I thank the neighborhoods for doing it. And I thank city staff for putting it together.
Awesome.
That was good. Councilor McDonald.
Yeah, I was just gonna echo what the other counselors said. I think it's awesome. I think the best kind of investment is the ones we can get when the community's actively involved and invested in their own projects and things they want to see done. So it's great. I'd love to see this grow. As long as there's increased demand, I'd be all for expanding the budget in the future.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anything else on that?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
A safe drive home. Oh, maybe you are home.
Yep, I got to go all the way through that door.
Wow. Technology, isn't it wonderful?
You bet.
Let me ask, you know, we usually do this. Is there anything else? And there always has been. And just maybe not tonight, but I'd like to ask the city manager if he has anything for us this evening.
We're playing musical chairs here.
Else.
No, I'm happy to hear the feedback on the community grant program. Dan deserves credit. He came to me a few years ago and asked about, saw a similar idea at a different location. We've talked about that before. That's there's a strong towns model out there. It's an organization that's pretty prominent, talks a lot, and they advocate for these sort of ideas. It's making small incremental investments over a broad area over a long period of time, and over time you start to see the improvement. And neighborhood buy-in, I think, really helps improve community spirit, get to know your neighbors, that sense of community, and then the city investing in people who are investing in the city. So I think that's a great program. So I just wanted to mention that since I have an opportunity, since the mayor brought me forward. So that's really all the comments I have tonight. Also want to thank Dan for his work on that program, and then Jana on the ballot box. If you haven't had a chance to drop off your ballot yet, I did that earlier. It's a great way to get your voting done, and I've already got the message from the county that mine's done, so you can go on the county and log to make sure they can track your ballot. So I know my ballot's in and counted, and I think we're gonna do some promotion on our. I'm looking over to Alyssa on our Facebook page to let people know of that process as well. So I know I was down here with my daughter, and we just saw a steady stream of cars coming through. So hopefully we're gonna get a good voter turnout here.
Keith, can you explain just for my poor benefit how somebody knew that somebody taking ballots out of the box and counting them right there?
No, it's a permanent box. You just drop it off. But I got my ballot last week, and I came down. I had a meeting with Jana, so it's nice when you can kind of mix the two. So I took my ballot into work with me and walked over and dropped it off last week, and then signed up for the online ballot return. So I got a text today that said my ballot had been accepted and was going to be counted. So they're just nice ways to keep track of, and it's just nice and convenient here. But it's been nice to see the steady flow of people using that drop box. But it's a permanent in-ground. We talked about Kindle and some of the public works staff. That box isn't going to go anywhere.
Well, in light of the world around us, I think it's really important to make sure that the safety and security of that, especially with this election, that you know, we say, well, we don't have problems with it here, but everywhere around us, there are questions about balloting and so on and so forth. I won't beat on that tonight more than I have.
No, I think one of the things that's important, and one of the things when we talk about the length of time it took for this was the security measures that need to be in place, and the city working with Bill Burgess to assure that the space was going to be safe and secure, and the security measure be in place. I know we talked about the police department as well. That's kind of what we're getting at there. So there was a lot that went in behind the scenes just to make sure that it was a safe and secure voting location.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Kate, tonight?
I have.
Okay. Anything from our administrative assistant here? All's well that ends well, something like that. Counselors, anything else this evening? I know it's disappointing to have to end at 8:15 instead of 9:30 or so, but if you can stand it, I certainly can. Anyone? No? Well, then let's go home. This meeting is adjourned. And thank all of you for being here tonight.
Thanks, everyone.